Hello. Welcome to episode 5 of my Every Cake Has a Story podcast. So, this is my first episode of 2026. I hope everyone had a lovely new year and, celebrated, watched the fireworks. I had a lovely dinner, whatever it was. Hope you have an amazing 2026. So, guess what we're going to talk about today? The flourless chocolate cake. So, the flour chocolate cake is a very interesting cake because it doesn't have any flour in it, obviously, and it doesn't have any leavening agents. So, normally you'd get a nut to, compensate for the flour, and then like an almond meal or a hazelnut meal. Then you need a fat, like normally you use butter, sugar, of course, and then, whatever flavor you'd like to use, in this case, chocolate. So, yeah, it's really important that all these ingredients have the right ratios because otherwise, if they don't, the cake won't cook well, or you can take it out of the oven and you'll see that it's split. So, it doesn't have the right texture. So that's why it's really important to follow a recipe and don't just guess estimate the amounts, because it won't work. So, where does the flourless chocolate cake come from? So, countries in Europe like France and Italy had a chocolate torte and the torte al cioccolato. So, I lived in Italy for about 3 years, many years ago, and I remember trying quite a few torte al cioccolato. So, that was the first time I came in contact with this beautiful cake. However, it does come back to a Jewish tradition, Passover, where, the Jews don't eat any leavening grains or flours. So they had to come up with ideas of baked goods where no flour, you know, had to be, well, when no flour was used, like macarons, for example. And that's why they come up with many other baked goods that have no flour or leavening agents in it. So yeah, so it's interesting how this cake, can relate to completely different cultures, France, Italy, and the Jews. But yes, my version of it, of course, I've got it on my Bakealicious menu, and I started making it since I started the business in 2017. I do, however, like adding some fresh raspberries before I bake it, because I feel that the tanginess and the sourness of the raspberry has a great contrast with the sweetness of the chocolate. However, you don't have to put any berries in it. You can just bake the chocolate cake by itself. And then when you serve it, you can add, fresh raspberries or any other fruit of your choice. Also, I like to add some yogurt. That's my personal preference, because some Greek style yogurt, which isn't sweet at all, and it just balances the raspberries and the chocolate. Or you could add a dollop of cream or ice cream if you're a really sweet tooth, because ice cream is sweet and the flourless chocolate cake is quite sweet. So it will be very sweet, but some people love it. So yeah, there's a few different options of how you can serve this cake. Another thing I'd like to mention about the flourless chocolate cake is that it's not really a decorative item because, you can, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's normally just one layer of cake. It's not tall, doesn't have all those layerings or fillings in between. So if you're celebrating a milestone event or a special birthday, an anniversary, a wedding, I would not recommend to have this cake. This cake, for me, it's like elegant, right? It's like just so smooth and rich. So, if you're having a beautiful, sit down meal, this is the perfect cake to finish that meal with, because, it's not going to be a centerpiece that you're going to decorate and it's going to look amazing. It's just going to be a cake that you're going to slice up, serve with, beautiful fruit or cream, like I mentioned earlier. And then that's going to be like the beautiful, touch to finishing that amazing meal that you had. So yeah, those are the things to consider when you're choosing a cake for your event. And yeah, I always think, there's some cakes that, are really good for some celebrations and other cakes that are not so good. And what else? So I spoke about the origins of this cake. I spoke about how you can decorate this cake when you serve it. And the other thing I could mention is that my recipe, not like many others, we normally separate the eggs, so the egg whites from the egg yolks, and we do a light meringue with the egg whites, and then we fold that in at the end when all the other ingredients are, together, are combined together. But there's many recipes where you don't have to do this. So there are many recipes for a flourless chocolate cake where you can just put the whole egg in. I like doing that because I feel that when you separate the egg whites from the egg yolks and you fold the egg whites at the end, it just gives it that creamier, smoother texture. But honestly, you don't have to do it. But this is our way of doing it. And of course, this cake, is great for people with celiac disease because there's absolutely no flour in it. Obviously not good for people with nut allergies or diabetes because it does have quite a high, sugar content, and it does have a high proportion of nuts as well. So just be aware of that. Um, yeah, and I guess like the last thing I'd like to say about this beautiful cake is that, sometimes because it has less ingredients, compared to all the other cakes I've spoken about, in my series, in my podcast, this cake is the only one so far that has no flour and no leavening agents, right? Which it makes it completely different to the rest. Mm. And even so, it's still such a beautiful, rich cake. So I feel like even if it has less ingredients, it can still feel like such a, like a deep, meaningful cake. So that just goes to show that, you don't necessarily need to always, find these complex recipes. Sometimes people think, oh, if it doesn't have all these ingredients or processes or, it's not going to be that good. But this is the proof that it can be. Because literally you just put all this, you put it together, you melt the butter and the chocolate and sift a bit of cocoa powder, the Belgian cocoa powder, a bit of vanilla extract, eggs, put the nuts in, and that's it, right? So it goes to show that, yeah, not necessarily all these, complicated recipes with all these complex ingredients or procedures necessarily mean it's going to give you a better cake. So that's just my take. If you haven't tried a flourless chocolate cake, please try a flourless chocolate cake. It is amazing. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.